I just got back from my first day of work, part 2, my first day of my second job. So I'm making a video a little bit later than normal. But it was a really good day. I went through sorting some packages, making sure that the oldest packages got put back into the system because they fall out of the system over time. And mailed off some like large stacks of letters that different branches of campus sent to us to meter and put on their account or whatever. And yeah, so it was a good day. I did a lot more than I would do when I'm work studying because, you know, I don't really have any homework or anything to do. So that was my day job, my new day job. And I'm really grateful to my boss for getting me another job. It was really sweet of her. And yeah, it was really good. After I was done with all of that stuff, it just took me about 2 hours, and then I wrote for a little bit, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about my writing, because I started writing when I was probably 4th or 5th grade, probably 4th grade, I will say. And I talked a little bit about how it was a form of escapism when I was in middle school and high school. But it really was. And that was because of a number of things. But my chair is really, really loud. It was because of a number of, you know, situations. Girls are really, really mean when they're 12 years old. 10 to 12 they're just not very kind, and I only had 12 girls in my class, so the other 11 girls didn't like me at once. So I started writing as a little bit of a form of escapism. But then I really started to enjoy it, and now it's very therapeutic for me when I have the time I like to spend getting, you know, I write fiction, so it's not really getting my thoughts out on paper, but it is like, I don't know, it just makes me happy. But one of my big projects that I've been working on since I was a sophomore in high school, so that would be 4 years now, which is crazy. One of my big stories is currently, I think, at the 15,000 word mark. I've taken a break from it because I am stuck in a plot hole that I can't really figure out how to get out of. So I'm taking a break and working on some other stuff and probably going to come back to it in a little bit, but right now it's on pause. But it's my big story, so I'll talk about it a little bit. I am the kind of person who read a lot of young adult fiction when I was a young adult, and I still enjoy the genre. I really love world building. I think books like The Hunger Games and Divergent and Matched and Shatter Me are all like super interesting books. And I love the world building element, which is why I'm super, super excited that there's a new Hunger Games book coming out, because it's a prequel, which involves a lot more world building. So it's very exciting. So I really like that aspect of young adult fiction, where they spend a lot of their time building up this dystopian world that's organized differently than ours, and it's super intriguing to me to see how different authors come up with different dystopias. And then I always fall out of them in the second and third installments, because it's always the heroine who always has a love triangle fighting against the system and trying to tear it down from the inside, and she succeeds, and the world is better off for it because it was a dystopia, not a utopia. So everybody is happy that the world isn't the same. So that is like the primary trio of adult books. It's like, first book, a lot of world building, a little bit of conflict, realizing that the world is a dystopia by the end of the book. Second book, fighting against the dystopia, having a few major setbacks, and then at the end there's like a minor victory. Then in the third book, they tear down the dystopia, or they find out it wasn't real all along, or, you know, they beat the bad guy, or whatever it is that, you know, happens. They basically destroy the world that the author spent the entire first book building. So when I was a sophomore, I was reading a lot of those books, but I was getting really sick of the trope of thing happens to girl, she meets a second love interest even though she already had one, girl fights against the system, girl beats the system. So I started writing a dystopia book where my basic idea for this dystopia is that it takes place a certain number of years into the future after there has been a third world war, a nuclear third world war. So all the people who are left are, you know, immune to radiation and have all these strange mutations and everything. So there are two classes of people, the elite people and then the plain normal people, and the elite people rule over the plain people. And so it's a dystopia. Not everybody has power. It's not exactly as much of a dystopia in the fact that the plain people still have plenty of money to live and they still get to live their normal lives, but the elite people have a lot more money and a lot more power. And basically, the idea is, it's still an ongoing idea, to center on my main character, who is a plain person who meets an elite person and basically goes on this adventure into their world, which is very different from her own. So there's a pair of characters who are very young elites, who the male character is an orphan and he's been raised by his aunt and uncle, and this girl is from the most powerful elite family in the entire world, and they fall in love and they're very young and they get married. And so that's like the main character's main in into the society, is that she gets, you know, accidentally invited to the elite home and then gets invited back and invited back and invited back and invited to the wedding. And so there are a lot of these like elite characters and you really get to know them, and she gets to know them and falls in love with one of them, as is the traditional, you know, trope, because my idea at the end of the book, as opposed to writing a trilogy, it would just be a standalone book, because I'm getting really sick of trilogies. It would be a standalone book, and she wouldn't try to subvert the system. She would just accept her place in the system for what it was, and maybe she would get to live some sort of elite life, but not bringing her family along, not overthrowing the elites, not staging an all-out war. And at the end of the book, the idea is that the same world that's set up at the beginning is the exact same. Nothing has changed except she's friends with these people that she didn't know before, which I think would be super interesting and subvert a lot of the tropes that are expected of that kind of genre, to have, you know, a dystopia stay a dystopia instead of becoming a war-torn world after dystopia. And I think that's super interesting, so that's my main writing project. And I have done such intense world building that I love all of my characters so much. They're like my own children. I never want anything bad to happen to them, and I love them all so much. But the only problem is that when you're a writer and you have to write a story that people will be interested in, you have to create conflict. And so I have to be the one to put my characters in peril, and it makes me upset because I love them all very much. They're all very in-depth. I've spent 4 years working on this. They're all very fleshed out. I know exactly what they want and how they can go about getting it, but how all the ways that it's going to go wrong and they don't get what they want. But yeah, so that's my main project. and I've been writing it for 4 years, so I'm at the 15,000 word point. I could definitely be farther. I take huge breaks from it from time to time, and go back to it. I have another story that's also at the 10,000-ish word point that it's not my big project. It's not my favorite. I like it enough. It's good. It's about a prince who's a crown prince who doesn't want to be king, as opposed to all those books where, you know, they want to be king, or somebody wants to be king, he doesn't want to be king, nobody wants him to be king. So that one's also kind of interesting because it's a struggle about him. Instead of like a struggle for the crown, it's a struggle to not have it. As you can tell, I read a lot of books, and so I am big into subverting everybody's expectations with my writing. But yeah, so that's a little bit about what I write and, you know, why I write. But yeah, so I had a really good day, really good first day of work. This is my 5th week of summer, which means there's only 7 weeks left, and only 5 of those weeks are at school, so I'm halfway done with my summer at school. It's very exciting. Yeah, so I'll see you guys tomorrow.